This is Unit 7 of my Entrepreneurship series class. It's a full semester long. This particular unit is about operations and systems, and it's ultimately how business is run. The objective is as follows. Students will design the internal operating system of their business and analyze how operational decisions impact profit, efficiency, and growth. The essential question is what I hope that my students can answer by the end of this unit. How do entrepreneurs build systems that consistently deliver value? My students throughout the entire semester long will pursue figuring out how they can start up their own business. If you're picking this up as a teacher as a one-off unit, I would recommend that you have your students identify a business to pursue for at least this full unit. Additionally, this is the pacing guide that I use. It is worth noting for this particular unit that I save up paper, kind of scrap paper, either that I've been writing on or that students have submitted for maybe a month, 2 months, depends on how much paper you accumulate because, well, you'll see in a little bit. We open with a think, pair, share. First, I have my students think individually. They come up with an idea of something that they could produce and sell realistically within a week. Maybe this is jewelry, or perhaps it's some kind of food service or something like that. And then they'll pair up with their elbow partner and then share out to the class. I always have them do something that's interactive to think about, well, how does this work at the very beginning? And in this case, whatever it is that they came up with, their product gained customer attention. Now they need to deliver. If 50 customers placed an order tomorrow, could the business actually deliver? In most cases, they would probably say no because, well, they just started it yesterday. But in reality, if you're a business, you need to know what your capacity is to be able to fulfill orders. And so this whole general idea is about operations. It's the system of processes, people, resources, and partnerships that consistently deliver value. Processes are, well, how the running of your business occurs. People, who does what to keep things moving. And then the resources and partnership, these are the outside inputs that support your operations. And operations as a whole is what ensures consistent quality, efficiency, and customer satisfaction. And when you start to see that the demand is picking up with your operation, so your operations needs to keep up with the demand, right? And as a result, if there's a small delay in any way, shape, or form, or any particular spot within your operational system or ecosystem, then small delays can become major issues. If there's a single slow step, it affects everything. Errors multiply. Customers start to lose patience also. And this is where we come down to the idea of standard operating procedures because businesses don't just operate and hope for the best, or at least not successful ones. Many times, if you look at a big business, they will have a written step by step guide that ensures a task is completed the same way every single time. If you go to a In N Out burger or some kind of a restaurant that has many, many, many chains, like a Starbucks, for example, you know that they have a standard operating procedure. The drink is made the exact same way, or the burger is flipped the exact same way. Business use these standard operating procedures to document their system so that tasks are completed the same way every time at every single location. They matter because it ensures consistency, they can reduce errors, it can make training easier, and it allows that business to grow and scale because if you can do it once at this location, you could do it a second time at a different location. If a business can't explain their process clearly, they don't have a system. And so when we talk about a standard operating procedure, we could do this simply with the idea of a paper airplane. For example, if we're going to produce one paper airplane, I could write out every single step necessary in as much detail as possible to ensure that every airplane is produced consistently and meets quality standards. I would need first materials, a sheet of printed paper, as well as a flat folding surface. I would then go through each of the individual steps in order to make that paper airplane, and then I may have quality standards to make sure that every airplane comes out identical so that the creases are sharp and it needs to glide a certain given distance. I would have a responsible role of having a production team member. Maybe I would have like an assembly line style of people making paper airplanes. It's a little bit silly, but you'll see where we're going with this. So if a student was going to create their first standard operating procedure, they would need to think about, well, what is the goal? Well, if a new employee can follow it without asking questions, you know that your standard operating procedures work. So choose one core task that you must perform consistently within your business. Perhaps it's producing your product or handling a customer's order or a complaint, answering a customer inquiry, packaging and delivery, onboarding with a new client. Then write out what is the clear task title, 6 to 10 numbered steps. What are the materials you need? What is the quality you expect? And who's responsible to do the task? I then kind of transition into the idea of, well, what is operations in effect? So how do you think businesses produce items in massive quantities? You'll get a bunch of students that'll rattle off a bunch of different ideas, and eventually somebody's going to say, well, maybe an assembly line in a manufacturing plant. And that's kind of what I'm going for. Systems increase output. When there's a system in place and everybody knows what to do and how to do it, and the right people are there for the job, instead of one person building the entire product, production can be divided into specific repeatable steps that just make sense. And every single person knows exactly what they need to do, what their task is. They know exactly what their sequence is, and they rely on the previous step to make sure that nothing went wrong there. I have my students watch this quick video. If you're a teacher that's on these slides, you can click on this video, or a student that's looking at the slides, you can click on the image right here as well as in the notes. There's a link to the video, and you can watch a video of an assembly line in action for Ford Motor Company. I then have my students think about what are some other products that they might think are built on an assembly line. You'll get a whole wide variety of things, ranging from a cell phone to a computer to a fill in the blank, whatever the next thing is, water bottle, could be anything. And then we get into an activity. I want to break down, instead of just going full lecture, we want to make sure there's some activities embedded, and I make sure I do that with every one of my units. So here's this scenario. You just went viral. Your paper airplane company just gained an unexpected attention online. You did something on social media, and everybody was like, hooray, I want your paper airplanes that you're producing because somehow you're a paper airplane business. I know that's silly, but students can conceptualize this. In 48 hours, you have 12,000 orders that just came in, and you're the only employee. You have a limited inventory of paper, no defined production process, and these customers are expecting delivery in 48 hours, and they must be identical. In your table groups, I have my students discuss where did they think the biggest delays would come. Students will come up with all kinds of things. Well, we have to go to the store and get paper. We need to be able to ship these things. And if we only have 48 hours, then we need to make sure we get these on the real plane in as quick of an amount of time as possible. So they went viral, and now they need to do the design phase. So before production begins, we need to create a prototype. You can see at the bottom, I put a definition there. The first model used to test and define and refine a design before going into full production. So the students are going to create one prototype airplane. They test it, and they need to make sure that it lands in the target zone, which I put about 8 to 10 feet away from wherever the launch zone is. And then they revise if needed. Once it's approved, they make this their team's official design. In the production, all of the airplanes need to match the prototype. I give them about 3 minutes to do this. From there, round one, they need to fulfill the order, produce as many airplanes as possible in 3 minutes. I break teams up into about 4 or 5 students. Each plane must use one full sheet of paper, and it needs to fly at least 8 to 10-ish feet, and all airplanes need to be of the same design. Once the timer starts, we get going. I always play some kind of like funny music that's kind of competitive. So in this case, since it's airplanes, I would probably do like the Danger Zone from Top Gun, right? Moving on. Now that we've got all these airplanes, we do some quality control flight testing. So we've got all these airplanes. First thing we do is we rule out, well, which ones are not of identical design. We take those out of the competition. Now we test all the airplanes. First, can it fly 8 feet? Next, does it land in the designated area? And we've already eliminated all the prototype airplanes. Any plane that doesn't meet all the criteria doesn't count. We prepare to launch. Students love this. It gets loud. We all start launching airplanes, and it turns pretty funny, to be honest. So the next piece here is some reflection. We want to start thinking about this idea of what is the bottleneck. This is the slowdown. So this is the step in a process that limits overall production. It's the slowest point in the system. No matter how fast other steps move, output can't exceed that bottleneck. Yeah, they can get through it, but if you've ever been in traffic and you just see that everything went down to one lane, everything like leading up to it, it could be a 5 lane highway. And then once it gets down to one lane, there's nothing you can do. You've slowed down, but as soon as it gets past that bottleneck, things can get going again. If we can increase the efficiency and open up that bottleneck, it allows us to become more efficient. I get my students to start reflecting on what it is that went well, what was an opportunity to get better. They needed to record how many airplanes they built, how many passed the quality control, how many safely landed in the target zone, and start thinking about and discussing what slowed production, where did the delays occur, did quality decrease as speed increased, and where were any bottlenecks that they might have encountered, and how can they get better? With that time, I usually do this on the next day. They've had time to kind of process what it is that they did. And now we do round two. They redesign the production system. They have to assign specific roles. They don't have to do an assembly line, but I do encourage them to consider it. They define the order of production steps, create a repeatable folding process, decide how the plane moves between workers, and then a quality control to make sure that all the planes meet the expectation of the prototype by the end. And the goal is to produce the highest number of airplanes that pass quality control. No change to materials, no extra paper, just better systems. Once we've done that, they document the system. They need to improve their plane making system. So they're going to create a standard operating procedure for their new strategy. It includes who are in what roles, what is the order of production steps, how do the planes move between the workers, quality control, and step by step instructions. The goal is that if you were to give these standard operating procedures to another team, they should be able to copy it exactly step by step and get the exact same results. Now, if you really wanted to, you could do a plot twist and actually give those standard operating procedures to another team. I've done that in the past. It doesn't tend to be as flowy as possible. So I typically don't do that, but it would be a twist for sure. Now it's time. We're going to do quality control for flight testing number 2. We've completed all of our second round of airplanes. How many flight 8 feet? How many landed in the area? How many matched the approved prototype? The hope is that your team has gotten better, gotten more efficient. They've improved a process somewhere within the realms of that general construction time frame. And now we can start talking about the system, because systems are everywhere. It's not just assembly lines. You see them all over the place where work gets divided into defined steps. Fast food, Amazon, hospitals, airports, construction, tech companies, the list goes on and on. If one role slows down, the whole system slows down as well. Operations isn't just manufacturing assembly lines, it's everywhere. Now we need to start thinking about, well, as a business in operations, what are our key activities? What are the main things that we're doing? So we shift away from the paper airplane activity, and now we shift into more of the design thinking of what is the back end of this, the actual educational written components of it. So the key activities are the most important things that our business must do well in order to deliver value. So these are some examples of key activities for varying businesses. Maybe they design products, maybe they manufacture, maybe they are really niche in customer service, like a Ritz Carlton or something like that. Maybe they're specifically a marketing agency. Perhaps they're all about logistics in like a trucking company that helps deliver things from point A to point B. Quality control. And there's more ideas that I also put in the notes here too. So, what are the key activities in your business? I then give you an example slide for a paper airplane company. Again, this is totally silly because realistically nobody would start this type of business, but maybe, well, maybe there's a demand out there. The key activities, well, you've got to have precise designs. You have to make sure that you have enough paper on hand. You need to, so maintenance of your materials. You need to maintain your folding consistency, test for flight performance, and more. Now we talk about KPIs, or key performance indicators. These are metrics, things that we can count. So if I'm a business and I want to be able to look at things, whether it's month over month, day over day, year over year, hour over hour, and I can compare and contrast, like I made this small tweak, how has it improved or hurt the business in this way, shape, or form? Metrics are numbers that we can use to directly determine whether or not we're successful in the changes that we're making. So here's some examples of things that a business might track. For example, KPIs would be units produced per hour, cost per unit, customer wait time, social media engagement, revenue per day, customer reviews, and more. So when I think about this, for example, if I go to a fast food restaurant and I'm going through the drive-through, you better believe that business is tracking how long it takes each customer to go through the drive-through so that they can figure out where's the bottleneck and how do we get better. These KPIs are measurable numbers that show whether your business is succeeding or not. What metric would matter most in your business? Students go to their guided notes. They then work on the guided notes. It's worth mentioning, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, guided notes come with every one of my units, and students can follow along in those guided notes, and all of this information is in there. So here's an example of a paper airplane company's KPIs. Perhaps they would want to track how many units can we make in under a minute? What's our defect rate below 5%? Like, can we keep our defect rate below 5%? So for every 100 planes made, do we have more than 5 airplanes that are defective and don't meet that quality control standard? What is our production time to create each individual plane? How many airplanes does each worker make? Maybe we could find that one of our workers is not up to snuff and keeping up with the other airplane creators. What is the average flight distance per plane? And then the percentage of landing in the target zone. These numbers show whether the business is succeeding. So that's why it's important. Next one up is key partnerships. These are the ideas of organizations or people that are not your business. They're outside your business, but your business relies on in order to operate and grow. These could be your suppliers, your service providers, your retail partners. There's a really long list of these. This is not all inclusive, but certainly gives you an idea. So why do they matter? Because it gives you access to resources, reduce your costs, reaches customers faster, and also shares the risk so you're not taking the brunt of all of it. So think about your business. Who do you need to succeed? So if you're, for example, you might make something, but do you also own a shipping company? If not, you probably need to rely on like a UPS or other logistics company. So a key partnerships example for the paper airplane company, well, you got to have a paper supplier, right? A distributor that is selling you the paper, because you might make paper airplanes, but you don't make paper. Maybe you need a packaging material supplier, someone where you can take all your paper airplanes, put it inside of a box, and then ship it off. What if your paper airplanes have a printed design on it? Maybe you're not a printer, so you have a printing supplier as well. Service providers. So we're going to need a delivery service, a website for our web base. Maybe we're not professional website developers, but we really make good airplanes. As a result, you need a website host, and you need a payment processing company to accept credit cards. Distribution partners, maybe I sell these through school stores or event organizers or on online marketplaces. If one of my key partners fails, productions or sales also slow. When we talk about distribution channels, this is the idea of how do we get our product or service to reach our customers. So you have direct, this is me selling directly to the customer. This is like Dell Computers. Dell Computers, you can go online to Dell and they will sell it directly to you. There is no middleman. I don't have to go to Best Buy and buy it. That would be the idea of direct. Retail would be if I was like Hewlett Packard and I'm selling Hewlett Packard computers through Best Buy to the consumer. Now there's a third person involved because you now have the manufacturer, Best Buy, and then the consumer. That's retail. Best Buy doesn't create the computer. Best Buy just sells the computer that somebody else made. They are a retailer. I could buy these things online. Maybe it's through a website or a marketplace, or maybe I'm buying a specific type of a computer or something like that using the same theme here, where it's business to business. Maybe I'm a school and I specifically want to buy school-based computers that are made for schools. So here's a better example, actually. Let's go with like a restaurant manufacturer. I wouldn't go and buy, if I'm opening up a restaurant, I wouldn't buy 100 forks, spoons, and knives from Target. That wouldn't make sense. I would go to a restaurant wholesaler, a business that specifically sells to other businesses, and that business right there would help me by getting me the best quality forks, spoons, and knives, probably at a reasonable price, that are restaurant quality grade to be put through the task of multiple dishwashings, possibly multiple times a day, so that I don't have to keep buying forks, spoons, and knives. So, a distribution example for my paper airplane business, we would sell our paper airplanes direct to customers at lunch on campus. That would allow us full control so that we would control the pricing. We would have low cost because there's no middleman since we're not selling at retail. And this would give us the most control in the early stages of our business. We need to build out our operations strategy for our business that we're pursuing for the semester or maybe just for this unit. It's time to make decisions for your business. What are the key activities? So, three primary activities your business must do every day, at least two KPIs, things that you can track each month or day or year or whatever it may be, at least three key partners. These are people that your business relies on. And then, what is your primary distribution channel? Is it direct, retail, online, wholesale, or something else? We didn't really talk about brokerage style, but that could also be something too. At the end of all of my slides, I make sure to ask my students if they have any questions, comments, or ways that I can teach this better next year so that I, as a professional, can grow. Folks, appreciate you watching this through. Appreciate your attention and also your ability to teach what I believe to be the most valuable classes on campus.